Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Noah Kitty, and together with Hazzan Jerry Berkowitz and Cantorial Soloist Harley Greene, I welcome and thank you for joining us on this beautiful Shabbat evening. Your presence makes our delight in the holiday all the sweeter. Before we begin this week's service, I typically like to review an event or a theme from the previous week. And this past week, actually for me, what stood out was the super flower blood moon that happened this past Wednesday evening. Actually, those of us on the East Coast did not get the full view of the eclipse, but still, we did get to see a really extraordinary full moon. It's a supermoon because the moon's orbit actually is not a circle. It's really an elliptical. So when it's full, when it's closest to the Earth, it's known as a supermoon. It's known as a flower moon. Actually, it's a inheritance from a Native American tradition that the full moon in May is flower, having to do with, of course, the harvest and spring. And it's a blood moon because it will align with the sun and the earth, and the moon will be in the shadow of the earth and will appear red. And actually, the more dust in the atmosphere, the more red it will appear. What is even more special about the full moon we just experienced was that it was a supermoon simultaneous with a lunar eclipse. So what does this mean? Well, traditionally, Jews did not, of course, assign any power or authority to the planets, but we did assign meaning. Meaning, when these really special atmospheric events happened, then it represented something else happening. In other words, it wasn't the cause, it was the result. So my invitation for you is to review this past week and see for yourself what your personal experience, your own kind of super flower blood moon that happened to you this past week. So as we move into Shabbat slowly and with the memory of something really special happening to us this past week, I invite you to join us as we begin our service. Thank you, Jerry.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue our service with the Kiddush for Friday evening.
All right, everyone, let's get our cups of wine ready and sing the Kiddush together. Vayehi erev vayehi vaker yom hashishi Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz לכל צבאם. ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. סברי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו. בשבת קדשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קדשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
We begin our practice of Kabbalat Shabbat, of singing our way into Shabbat. We begin with the first of a series of songs, Shalom Aleichem, peace be upon you. Thank you, Harley.
Thank you, Rabbi Noah. Shalom Aleichem, peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Shalom Aleichem. Think about how we used to sway back and forth in our sanctuary. We'll be back doing that again pretty soon. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShoresh, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Good Shabbos, everyone.
We continue our joyous welcome of bringing in Shabbat with L'chu Neranenah. Thank you, Jerry.
L'chu Neranenah l'Adonai, Nari al Tzur Yishenu. נקדמת פניו בתודה, בסמירות נריע לו. לכו נרננה לאדוני, נריע לצור אישנו. נקדמת פניו בתודה, בסמירות נריע לו.
We continue together with Mizmor LeDavid. How inspiring is it to know that our ancestors also enjoyed playing a lovely instrument while accompanying themselves in prayer.
Mizmor LeDavid, Avul Adonai b'nei Elim, Avul Adonai kavonos, Avul Adonai kevod shemo, Yishtachavu Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim, El hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shomer arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halabanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel, Levanon v'sivyon kemo v'reimim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavodesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kodesh, Kol Adonai yechol elayalon, Vayechesof ye'arod, Uvehechalo kulo omer kavod, Adonai lamavul yashav, Vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom.
Our last song in our series is Lecha Dodi, Come My Beloved. How wonderful, how joyful, how loving and heart-filling would it be if we had the confidence that the universe really is responding to us in love, that we really can hear our Creator through the voice of all that surrounds us, saying to us, Lecha Dodi, come my beloved. Thank you, Jerry.
Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, v'li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, v'li Shabbat mekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el ha'meichad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem letiferet ve'lefila. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, v'li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, v'li Shabbat mekabela. Mikdash melech ir melucha, u'mitzeim mitoch ha'afecha, Rav lach shevet be'emek ha'bachar, v'hu yachamol alayidem la. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, v'li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Yitoreri, yitoreri, Kiva orech umeori, uri uri shir dameri, Kevon Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. V'hayu l'Mashiach shosayit, V'rachaku kol mibalayit, Yasis alayit Elohayit, Kimsos katana gala. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Bohi b'shalom ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzala, Toch emunei am segula, Bohi chala, Bohi chala. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We continue together with the Chetzi Kaddish, signaling the conclusion of the Kabbalat Shabbat portion of our service.
Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabba, V'yalmad yivarach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, V'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, V'agalo v'zman kariv v'yimaru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, Le'olam u'le'omei omaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yidromam v'yidnasei, V'yitadar v'yidalev v'yitalal shemei dekudasha berichu, Le'ela mikal birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechavata, Da'amiram ve'alama v'yimeru. Amen.
We continue together with the Baruch Hu, the formal beginning of our evening service. It is customary for us to stand to give a physical representation of the attention we should pay when we acknowledge before whom we stand. We continue with the Baruch Hu. Thank you, Jerry.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam, le'olam, va'ed.
We continue together with Ahavat Olam, a beautiful song teaching us that because we are so beloved by God, we received all these wonderful gifts. Torah and mitzvot, truly the world in its entirety. These are all signs of the devotion our Creator has for our welfare.
Thank you, Rabbi. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Lamchata, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shalveinu v'kumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed, ki heim chayenu, Yorech Yameinu, Ubahem Nege, Yomam Valayla, Yomam Valayla, Ve'ahavatecha, Al Tasir Mimenu Le'olamim, Baruch Atah, Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
We continue together with the Shema and Via Hafta as we prepare for these two important prayers this evening. I will draw your attention to a very interesting, short but peculiar incident that happened in this week's Parsha of Bahalotecha. In its Eldad and Medad were two men who were actually not included in the 70 that were assigned to prophesize along with Moses. And what happened was they were outside of the area where the others had gathered, and all of a sudden they started prophesying in the street. And Moses was warned, these two guys, they're Eldad and Medad, they're prophesying. I mean, you have to stop them. In other words, they can't be permitted to continue because they're not part of the assigned group. And what do we know about Eldad and Medad? Actually, not too much. Tradition tells us that they were the two who instituted the reading of the Megillah and therefore the holiday of Purim. But when we look at their names, Eldad is beloved of God and Medad is embracing love, really friendly love, meaning these two represented love, just belovedness. And in that state, they started prophesying in the street, inspired. And what we learned further about these two, as we learn in the Parsha, that the other 70 who were formerly assigned to be prophets, the Midrash says, those 70 received their prophesying ability through the merit of Moses. But Eldad and Medad, they merited because of their great love to receive prophecy directly from God. And so when Moses responded, I wish all of you could be like Eldad and Medad, really we were being invited, passionately and warmly invited, strongly invited by someone like Moses to be like Eldad and Medad, to be just full of love and share that among all of those that we meet. We continue together with the Shema and V'ahavta. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Va'ed Ve'ahata et Adonai Elohecha Bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha beveitecha uvelektecha b'derech Ubeshachbecha ubekumecha ukshartam leod al yadecha vehayu letotafot beineinecha uketavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvishearecha.
We continue together with the Mi Chamocha, who is like you among all the interesting and invisible gods and godlets up there in heaven. God is not alone, acknowledges this song. God is simply the supreme creator of all that is.
Dora tehila dosefele, Dora tehila dosefele. Malkuchara umaneka, Bokeh ayam lefnei Moshe v'Miriam. Ze Eli anu amru, Ze Eli anu amru.
We continue together with the Hashkivenu, the nighttime prayer, the prayer we say with such conviction and truly such gratitude that we should be blessed with peace, that we should have such the significant blessing, truly significant, that we can lie down in peace and rise up in the morning renewed. May it be so. Thank you, Jerry.
Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, Lehamidenu shomeinu lekayim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, Lehamidenu shomeinu lekayim. Ushmor tzeitenu L'chaim u'shalom me'ata v'yad olam. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, lehamidenu Shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu l'chaim Ushmor Tzeitzenu V'aleinu L'chaim U'shalom Me'atam Yadonai. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu l'chaim.
We continue together with Yismichu and Vishamru, two beautiful, joyful songs expressing the pleasure when we fully immerse ourselves in the celebration of Shabbat. Thank you, Harley.
This evening we're going to do zippy versions of the Vishamru and the Yismachu. So, here we go. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam, oti leolam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat L'doraton berit olam. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Makadashei Shavi'i. Kulam yispeu v'yidangu mituvecha. V'hashvi rati savo v'kidashto. Chemdat yomim oso karoso zechel mase bereshit. Yismechu b'malachutecha. Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha. Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat.
We continue together with the Amidah, the central prayer in our evening service, and a wonderful opportunity to spend a few moments in silent contemplation with our Creator. As we prepare for the Amidah this evening, I invite you to consider yet another interesting incident in our Parsha this Shabbat, when the people were complaining that they didn't like the food. You know, they didn't like all this manna. And what they really wanted was meat. Because they just missed the sensation, they missed the flavor, they missed the taste, they missed just everything about it. Meat, meat, meat. And Moses was taken aback because there was a lot of them. And how do you feed 600,000 people? Actually, there was twice that number, but let's stay with that one. How do you feed them all at the same time? You know, by the time you serve somebody breakfast, it's time to serve the one at the end of the line dinner. So anyway, of course, God supplies the meat by blowing a big wind and actually blowing the birds off course and landing them on top of the Israelites, who got to eat meat until it was coming out of their eyeballs, as it were, because that's all there was for 30 days. So one of the questions was, you know, like, was someone being rude or difficult here? What was going on with the Israelites that, you know, they keep harping on the food? And for me, it really was an indication that the Israelites were still looking backwards, that they were still looking and so concerned about what they left because they did not yet have the confidence of what they were moving towards. So, of course, not only does looking backwards slow you down, but it's not the direction you're heading. So you're going to be doubly frustrated. So as we move into prepare for the Amidah this evening, I invite you to think of what, if anything, in your life you miss leaving behind, that you no longer have, that it was something perhaps you used to enjoy and you simply no longer do at this point. What was it that enabled you to acknowledge the thing that no longer served and enabled you to put the desire for the past down and turn your head and look forward into the future, into tomorrow, and what new and wonderful things that it could bring as we continue with the Amidah. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Rabbi. Adonai sifatai tiftach, ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עבר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדם מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, והכל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. הוא עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We continue together with the Mishaberach. We pray that anyone challenged with an illness is healed completely in body and in spirit. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, Avraham, Yitzhak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yivarech et HaCholim. The names of our healing list include Sidney Honig, Rose Franco Granerwetter, James Vazmachian, Sheila Nudis Cutler, A.C. Robertson, Roberto Correa, Melissa Vacalis, David Canal, Rick Greenberg, Lori Melman, Jack Melman, Herb Slomowitz, M.J. Malarkey, Marie Taranto, Gelsis Resto, Thomas Vuono, Jamie Meadows, Vicky Dobkin, Joe O'Bain, Karen Tanney, Dan Friedman, Yolanda Rappaport. I also invite you to say the name of anyone you'd like to send some healing energies to. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and of spirit. And let us say, Amen. Thank you, Harley.
Thank you, Rabbi Noah. Mi shebeirach avoteinu mikor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Was as typical this Shabbat as it is for most Shabbatot, I try to relate what's going on in the Torah portion with what's going on in the world, because I really believe that there's an enormous amount of wisdom in our Torah, and there's an awful lot going on in our world that could use a bit of wisdom to address it. So this past week was the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, and I wanted to think about what could I add to that conversation. I truly believe that not everything has been said as much as has been said, but I didn't think that I could add to what has already been said about what's going on today in terms of George Floyd, the problem of racism in our country, the problem of racism in the Jewish community. But looking at the Torah portion, I had a few ideas. So one is to understand that when you're talking about what goes on in the Torah, that we start with the narrative itself. But we also understand that the narrative is not all there is to understand. We have to look into the context, and we also have to look into the possibilities. So that in itself, the process, the method of understanding Torah, I believe would help us understand what's going on with George Floyd and racism and the whole complicated and convoluted and extremely nuanced and layers of trying to understand race relations in this country. The first thing is to understand that there's a lot of different ways to understand it, that there are not one truth, but that there's many truths, that there's many perspectives, that there's many understandings that have to be somehow pieced together to give us some kind of understanding of the whole, because it's only in that way, in trying to have as complete an understanding as possible, can we really go forward addressing everyone's real and authentic and powerful concerns. So that's what Torah study not just invites but demands that we do, that we look at it from different perspectives and look at different possibilities. And what do we learn when we do that, when we look at this particular parsha of the Cushite woman? Well, the first is that there might be two women, and there might be one woman. In other words, Miriam seems to be complaining about Moses' new wife because what happened to his first wife, Zipporah. And there are others who say, well, actually, this woman, the Cushite woman, is Zipporah. So Miriam is actually calling Zipporah that Cushite woman who he just divorced. And she's complaining that he divorced his wife because they've been together for a long time, and maybe Miriam really liked her, and maybe Miriam thought that she didn't deserve to be divorced. That actually Miriam was complaining not about the color of the Cushite woman, but at the fact that her brother divorced his wife Zipporah, and in that way insulted and humiliated her. And so in complaining about that, Miriam is saying he shouldn't have treated her that way. So what else is going on in the commentary? Well, there's others who say, well, if it's true that Zipporah was black, it doesn't make sense that Moses would divorce her because she was black when he married her. And they had been married for a long time, so it can't have been her color. It could not have been her race that was the deciding factor, because she's had it all along. And another commentary says, well, Miriam is complaining that Moses insulted Zipporah by divorcing her, and Zipporah herself supports this idea that she was divorced, that she was separated from her husband. When we read in a commentary in Midrash that says, when Eldad and Medad were prophesying in the streets, Zipporah said, well, I hope for their wives' sake that their prophesying does not cause them to be separated from their husbands. Meaning that it was because Moses had actually taken on the mantle of prophet, that due to that he had separated himself from Zipporah, which pained her tremendously. Another reason that Miriam might have been complaining about her baby brother's behavior was she could understand why Moses had married Zipporah. After all, it was a time when he was running out of Egypt and he was being chased and he was in Midian and he was all alone and he had no authority and he had no one to turn to. So yes, it makes sense that he married Zipporah at that time. But now he's a somebody. He's got people. He's got stuff. Why did he not marry an Israelite woman? Why did he go for a Cushite woman? What's the matter? Are Israelite women chopped liver? So again, it had nothing to do with the race of the Cushite woman. It had to do with the fact that Moses married outside the tribe and what was going on with that. Yet another reason, one of our earliest translations, Onkelos, that was the first Aramaic translation in the 2nd century CE, actually calls Cushite a title, an honorific, that actually means beautiful. So Miriam is complaining that Moses married a beautiful woman, that somehow he threw Zipporah over for this gorgeous new wife, and Miriam was upset about it. So would it be due to a race? No. In this understanding of the term Cushite, it's a honorific, meaning beautiful. And just interestingly, there is a gematria that says Cushite equals the number 736, which also is the same number as Yafeh Mir'ah. So, I mean, beautiful in appearance. So Cushite can be equated with beautiful appearance. Again, nothing to do with race and only to do with beauty. So what does this mean for us? One of the things it means, and I hope one of the more important things it means, is that we need to discuss race in the Jewish community. But it also means that there are a number of ways to understand it, that it's not always about something stereotypical and detrimental, that we can understand ourselves as being nuanced and multi-layered and needing to be understood in a variety of contexts. Why is that? Well, for myself, it's because I understand Torah as God's attempt to speak to humanity. So it would be like us trying to communicate to spiders, this is how you should act. Now, we might think as their creators that we've done a bang-up job of making sure what we said, what we communicated was absolutely clear, and perhaps it was. But from the human way of understanding it, if we believe truly and honestly that God is infinite, that everything God expressed has to be understood as having an infinite number of possible understandings, that there can't be a single way to understand anything of Torah, that if we settle on just one thing, we've missed the point, that the world is multivalent and complex. And the more we open ourselves to, again, the infinite number of possibilities to understand the world, then we ourselves increase in wisdom and in turn increase in effectiveness and in grace in responding to our world. Now, as I was looking over the portion and looking over the commentary, I noticed that not a single commentary that I could locate had anything coming out of the mouth of the Cushite woman assuming that she was actually a separate woman from Zipporah and assuming that she was a black woman. So I thought, well, this isn't right. And determined to give her a voice, I remembered a poem that I read first many, many years ago by a famous black lesbian feminist poet, Pat Parker. And she wrote this exquisite poem entitled, "For the White Person Who Wants to Know How to Be My Friend." She writes, "The first thing you do is to forget that I'm black. Second, you must never forget that I'm black. You should be able to dig Aretha, but don't play her every time I come over. And if you decide to play Beethoven, don't tell me his life story. They make us take music appreciation too. Eat soul food if you like it, but don't expect me to locate your restaurants or cook it for you. And if some black person insults you, mugs you, rapes your sister, rapes you, rips your house, or is just being an ass, please do not apologize to me for wanting to do them bodily harm. It makes me wonder if you're foolish. And even if you really believe that blacks are better lovers than whites, don't tell me. I start thinking of charging stud fees. In other words, if you really want to be my friend, don't make a labor out of it. I'm lazy. Remember. From Movement in Black by Pat Parker, written in 1978. So I include this voice so important to have all of our voices included, all of our experiences acknowledged, and all of the wisdom that we can possibly share. The more we open ourselves to the truth of each other's experience, to acknowledge there's more than one way to live in the world, just as we say there's more than one way to serve God, there has to be more than one way to serve and understand the infinite. So as we go along our path, and certainly, hopefully, as we enjoy the rest of the hours of this blessed Shabbat, may you entertain the possibility that yours is just one story, and that your song would be so much more rich if it was joined by the songs of everyone else with whom we share this beautiful, this sacred, this holy planet. Shabbat Shalom. We continue together with the Aleinu.
Thank you, Rabbi. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latei gedula liyotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפת זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום להשב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתינו.
May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up a hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun over all humanity, cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We continue together with a prayer for our country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and in spirit. Amen. We continue together with the Mourner's Kaddish. The most recent deaths in our community include Jack Meslish, remembered by Harley Greene, Edigail Schatz, remembered by Harley Greene, Ron Lampert, remembered by Nina Lampert, Daniel Wetzler, remembered by Arnell Booker, Stephen Hoffman, remembered by Nina Lampert, Saul Silverman, remembered by Marilyn Silverman, Vicki Weeks, remembered by Arnell Booker, Julia Marie Shaver, remembered by Harley Greene, Cy Robin, Rita Fisher. Our yahrzeit list includes Eric Chrysler, Alberto Schoengut, remembered by David Schoengut, Paul Goldberg, remembered by Stephen Shaw, Sherry Dellin, remembered by Sidney Honig, Stephen Edwards, remembered by Harley Greene, Charles Keefe, remembered by Larry Owsley, Hyman Weber, remembered by Fred Weber, Tinker Friedman, remembered by Dan Friedman and Gloria Stein, Julius Weiss, remembered by Mark D. Gordon, Peter G. Botterford, Rhoda Hauer, Norman White.
Thank you. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei Rabba, bi'amah divrach yuseh v'yamlich malchuseh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedachal beit Yisroel, ba'agalo v'yizman koriv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mavarach le'olam olamei almaya, yisborach v'yishtabach v'yispoar v'yisroman v'yisnaseh, v'yisadar v'yisaleh v'yisalo, shmei dekudashah b'richu. Le'elo min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiram b'yama v'yimru amen. Yehi shlomo rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen.
Announcements. I hope everyone truly is invited to join us at Book Brunch. This book this time is The Secret Book of Kings, which tells really a fascinating story, the other side or an other side of the story of King David and really all his particular adventures. Very, very interesting story. And beyond that, Just know that we are working hard to bring back in-person services, and we hope to have an announcement sooner rather than later. So thank you, everyone, for joining us online. And when we do begin in-person services, we actually will continue filming them. So for all those who aren't able to get out or for whom distance is really an issue, we will continue to have our services available online. So we continue with our concluding song of Adon Olam. Thank you, Jerry.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Na'asa B'chefzo Kol Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Lo Ra Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hove Ve'hu Yeh B'tifara Ve'hu echad ve'ein sheni lehamshila lehachmira Veli reishit veli tachlit velo ha'oz ve'hamizra Ve'hu eli ve'chai gavali ve'tzorchem li b'yetzara Ve'hu nisi u'manosli menat kosi b'yom ekra Be'ado avkid ruchi, be'tishan be'ayira. Ve'imruchi geviyati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Adon Olam Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra. Leit na'asa b'chefzo kol, Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra. Good Shabbos, everyone.
We conclude our service, as is our custom, with a community blessing. First, I invite you to breathe in all these songs and prayers we shared this evening and release them back to each other and to the world. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May you feel God's presence within you always, and may you find peace. Amen v'amen, and good Shabbos.
Today live like a wanna. Let yesterday burn and go within a fire, in a fire.